the Podfather himself is joining us from the Ringer. The man who, I guess he thinks I sound like Sling Blade, Bill Simmons. What is it? It's like, oh, you guys are going to regret Marcus Smart and losing Marcus Smart. And your imitations of me were just abhorrent.
I'm terrible at imitations. Don't take it personally. I don't do any good imitations.
I can't sound that country. Come on. All right.
Well, I mean, we are on Skype. I had to look at my Skype app and see what the hell was going on.
You have no idea how much I fought this. Look, please keep on. I hate Skype with the fires of seven hells.
I didn't realize Skype was still an app. I had to find.
In fairness, you still have an AOL address.
Yeah, that's fair.
So let's not go too far on I didn't know Skype was still an app. I didn't know AOL still hosted addresses. Do you even know who hosts that anymore?
Listen, do you ever hear about any AOL hacking scandals? Because I don't. Nobody ever thinks it's the stealth email service right now.
Everybody stopped using it 30 years ago. All right, before I get into our big news that we have to cover, the NBA draft last night, I listened to all your pods that you did with KOC and Tate. When you wake up this morning and you've done all of those pods, what do you end up thinking about first?
I mean, the Portland situation. That was the one for me that, just that it played out that way. I just didn't believe the information that Charlotte was going to take Miller second. And I just felt like it was going to be Scoot and it was a smokescreen. And even when the gambling odds all of a sudden shifted heavily to Scoot a couple days ago, it was like, all right, this is what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it was Brandon Miller. And now Portland is in this huge conundrum where they have, I think, a really good group of young assets. And then Dame Lillard, and then Jeremy Grant, who, if you're going to try to run it back, you overpay him, you keep Dame, but then I don't know what you do with all those assets. So this is great for us. It's great for people that make podcast content because Portland is going to be the dominant story over the next couple of weeks. So that was where my head went first this morning. Like, gee, I wonder what they're going to do. And then the Cam Whitmore thing was the other one because that was just weird. And, the NBA draft telecast we watched the ESPN one. ABC had the one that was supposed to be for people like my wife. But the ESPN one wasn't really for us either. It wasn't like a basketball show. It was how many family members can we interview and how much can we spend talking about the strengths and weaknesses of the players. And they missed basically all the basketball conversations. And Whitmore dropping to 20 was about as stunning as I think we've seen in a while with the draft. There was no scenario where he was going to fall out of the top 10 basically until this week. And then he goes 20 and you have smart teams like Miami and Golden State passing on him. And I just want to know more. So those are my two big things. What about you?
Yeah, I was just talking about the Whitmore thing right before you came on because it was shocking. And I feel like everyone in the free world had that kid in anywhere from 5 to 10, right? Like every mock you looked at worst 5 and 10, and at the best maybe up to 5 or 4 in some cases.
Right.
And then he doesn't get drafted, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, his interview sucked. He got red flagged." And it's like, wait, what? like your mock said he was going to go in the top 10 this morning.
What was the medical issue? Shouldn't we know at least what body part it was today? I don't understand it.
No one has said. The last time I could remember something like that happened was actually here in Memphis after Kansas won the title in 2008. Everyone had Darrell Arthur as a lottery pick, and they got him late first round. But It was a serious medical ailment that caused 20 teams to mark him off, right? He ended up having a decade-long career. And so that was it. And he played on playoff teams, no less, for Memphis at that time. But
yeah, there was the Brandon Roy, Randy Foye draft where Randy Foye's heart was on the other side of his body. And that kind of freaked teams out. And Brandon Roy had all the knee stuff. But those guys still went in the top 10.
Right.
And that was, I thought the Whitmore thing, whatever the medical issue is, once it gets out of the lottery,
yes,
and the guy's that talented, you have to take him.
Yes.
You just have to because once you get past 16, it's a crapshoot anyway. You have a 10 to 12% chance of getting anybody, you know. And that Memphis has been a team that's done really well at the tail end of the draft, second round. But for the most part, there's only 3 or 4 teams that have ever nailed those picks. So I thought that was stunning. And then my team getting the 25th pick from you guys, and we were taping the draft. It was happening. They kept trading back like it was the NFL draft. I thought Belichick took over the control room or something.
I was laughing so hard.
You said I love.
You said I'm gonna go stick my head in the oven.
Oh my God! But they got this guy I love from Arkansas. I was like, we got the bald guy. I love that guy. He had no shots last year because Arkansas had a million offensive players, but he was like the classic, does everything. Like he actually was like a Memphis pick. So I was psyched they got him, but the whole thing was weird.
And then they just kept trading back. All right, so you had that pick by virtue of the trade that went down earlier this week. And one of the things that I found interesting is like, and I just recorded with KOC a little bit earlier, and I said, I just view it through the prism of, if you're a Boston fan, in that afternoon, you're getting Porzingis and you're giving up Malcolm Brogdon. It's like, I have no attachment to Malcolm Brogdon. Who gives a crap? The guy, he played well. Yes, he was Sixth Man of the Year. But we like Derek White. We think Derek White should be playing more anyway. If I'm giving up Malcolm Brogdon, okay, no one's even like blinking over that. Okay, we traded Malcolm Brogdon. And then it just feels to me, because I know on the Grizzlies side, they had absolutely no inclination that they could ever get Marcus Smart. Right?
Yeah.
So they got roped into it, and then it was like, hey, of course, we would love to have Marcus Smart. But the fact that it went from Brogdon to Marcus Smart, to me, changed everything about how I would view that deal from your side, where I'd be like, okay, I gave at one point, maybe I like Porzingis, or maybe I think he can be very helpful, and I'm not giving up anything I really care about anyway, to I'm giving up a guy that just played 108 playoff games in 9 years and has Smart's cards at the local hospital, and like I don't know, man. Like it felt like it went from something you didn't care about giving up to something you cared deeply about giving up rather quickly.
I think that's fair. I will say during the regular season, Smart was the third best out of the 3. He just was. He was playing Brogdon and White were playing better than him when Brogdon and White were together. Yep. That was usually when the team was the best. And then Brogdon got hurt. So, I think the fact that Brogdon got hurt in the playoffs was pretty underrated for what happened to the Celtics in that Miami series, because the one thing they had coming off the bench was these 2 guards that would come in. They would change the pace of the game. They would start attacking. And they just lost that. Right. Brogdon could create his own shot. I'm with you, though, that they probably had less attachment to Brogdon, and that trade was way more of a no-brainer. It was just like you turn Brogdon into Porzingis, of course. I do wonder if they would have moved on from Marcus either way, like whether that Porzingis trade happened or not. I think it's 2 separate questions, and then the questions that end up merging. I think they really wanted Porzingis. That's somebody Stevens has wanted really since like 2017, 18. He's loved him. It's also one of those things that it worries me a little bit, but Porzingis has killed the Celtics a couple times, killed them. And you know how that goes with teams where they don't get to see everybody. Now, Stevens he's not coach GM, he's GM, but the stuff that he brings to the table, they just didn't have. Horford was playing way too many minutes last year, and a lot of times he wouldn't make a 3 for a week during the playoffs, and teams would just leave him alone. And if Grant wasn't making a 3, then we couldn't basically play any big who could make a 3, And I think with Porzingis, you're not going to be able to leave him alone. He also can post up. There's all these reasons they got him. But the Smart piece, he didn't play well last year. There's a lot of miles on the body. He's been there 9 years, and I think he had an outsized voice and kind of role and connection to that team that maybe they wanted to move away from a little bit. The more I'm hearing about it, and the more you kind of read between the lines with stuff, I think they wanted to turn this team over to Brown and Tatum and Mazzulla. And that's the other thing. I think they're all in on Mazzulla. Whether that's a good idea, we can debate that for an hour.
What about being all in on Brown and Tatum? Brown is, as you've chronicled, he's massive discontent. He's going to be the only disappointed player to ever sign for $200 million.
Well, massive discontent's a little strong. Come on, Vernon.
But I mean, like
he got a little pissy a couple times. He played.
You read Logan's article.
Really,
it was on the Ringer. Like the guy doesn't.
I know. Well, they tried to trade him. His feelings were hurt. I mean, these guys are human beings. But I do think Smart he felt like it was a big three, and he acted that way and he behaved that way, and he felt like it was his team as much as anybody. And they had a real problem last year. And Marcelo and I were talking about it on our podcast, basically from February on. This team had a problem with Smart versus White at crunch time. White was playing much better than Smart. White was the second or third best player on the team in the playoffs, but during the season he was the third best guy in the team, hands down. Wasn't close. And they had to keep taking him out in the last 5 minutes because Mazzulla didn't want to lose the locker room by benching Smart, and Smart wouldn't have handled it well. And he shouldn't have handled it well because he's had 9 years there, and he felt like it was his team. Yeah. So I do think there was a piece of that. Like I think they love White. I think the rest of the league loves White. I think if you could criticize them for anything in the playoffs last year, it's that they didn't use White enough, that they didn't set picks for him, they didn't run plays for him. He was really effective, when you use him like in kind of a Chris Paul, Tony Parker way. He got good shots. And it just they never solved that situation. It was one of the reasons they lost. So I think maybe thinking they're selling high. Maybe you're selling a year early, but it's still the right idea. And if you're Memphis, it's just a great trade because you're going to get a rejuvenated, pissed off guy who's been in a bunch of playoff games, who's an adult, who is like I said this yesterday on the pod. If we did a fantasy draft of guys who make the most sense in Memphis, would he be the first pick?
I think probably number one.
He combines all of the qualities of every guy Memphis has loved for the last 20 years.
Yes.
Zebo, Tony Allen, go through the list. He's like a amalgam of all those guys.
And it's fascinating what you say about the outsized right there. And look, I have admittedly chuckled when you guys talk about the problem with the Celtics last year, the problem with the Celtics the last couple of years, because to me, I sit there and go, I would love to have Eastern Conference Finals, NBA Finals problems. When you guys talk about the problems with the teams, the guys started 41 games in the playoffs the last 2 years. Your problems are different than our problems, right?
Yeah, but at some point, there's a ceiling that you have to decide, have you hit it or not? I think they decided we've hit the ceiling with whatever this nucleus is.
And maybe just maybe, when you say the outsized importance, when you read those stories last year after they lost one of the games, I believe it was in the East Finals or maybe it was the semis, where Smart came in, he chucked a chair against the wall and he started screaming at everybody, right? Maybe it's time to move on from that because of what he means to that. But you can't need that more than we needed in Memphis. That's exactly what we need. What is viewed as a negative, maybe the voice is too loud. We yearn for a voice, for somebody that when Ja's been out until 4 a.m. and is strolling in to shoot around, even though he's going to perform that night, somebody willing to get up in his face and has the gravitas to do something like that. And I don't want to just single out Ja, anybody for that matter. On the team, when you got a bunch of young guys, they will all look up to him. All of them.
There's another guy you might be able to get in free agency too, right? So you get a couple adults.
Yep.
You solved the Dillon Brooks issue. It was time for him to go. Ja, we'll see what happens with him. I mean, the Ja thing, where this went from last November to where it is now, where, I had him in my trade value column in February. He was 7th or 8th.
Yep.
And then I made a new list last week and he was 28th because I don't know what we're going to get from him.
Yep.
Did the light bulb go off or not? I'm older than you. I watched a lot of dudes. This is the NBA I grew up with, was a lot of guys who were incredibly talented and something held them back or the light bulb didn't go off. And all of them had some sort of moment when it was a fork in the road, crossroads thing, and they either figured it out or they didn't. And you kind of become who you are. And this is going to be the challenge with him. So putting more adults around him, putting more stability around him, ultimately that's all that matters, right? How good Marcus is, fine. Is he an A-, a B+, whatever. What matters is Ja. Whatever the ceiling is of this Memphis team is going to be Ja. So
and they've been pretty
clear.
clear.
Marcus, you get one more guy, and
They built
you're
that
changing the
team.
culture.
They built that team where they know it's Ja and Bane and Jaren. And those are three guys, and everything else can change, but that's not changing. And so I do think just having that structure, but, it's crazy. The ones, if you ever talk to any of those young guys, the ones they would talk about are Solomon Hill. They would talk about Jay Crowder. They would talk about Kyle Anderson, like all those guys. And they made a big...
Celtics did Horford for the Celtics. That's like the guy they always point to.
That's right. And they made a big mistake in tripling down on youth because it turned there was nobody else. Tyus Jones is an awesome veteran. Tyus Jones is not Mr. Vocal. And he's also your best player's backup. So he's not going to have this.
The slow-mo
strong
thing hurt you, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Not having slow-mo hurt, and I think you had a chance to move on.
Melton, too, because Melton was just like, for people that haven't been around him, Melton is like the never had a bad day in his life guy. You never saw DeAnthony Melton, and he's the kind of guy that walks into a room and everybody's happy immediately because he's happy. Like, he's just that guy, You
had a chance to move off Brooks a year ago when it was pretty clear that that's what, and you and I would talk about that a lot. You had a chance. What happened in the playoffs a year ago was like, man, this guy thinks he's better than he is, and that's the worst kind of guy to have on a playoff team. That's also Marcus's biggest problem, just FYI.
He's better, though. He's better.
He's better than Dillon Brooks, but he will also, I've said this on the pod over and over again, the ball always finds him in the biggest spots of the game. It just does. And he's completely unafraid to take the biggest shot or make the biggest play of any game, and it's the best quality and it's the worst quality of him. But just for your audience, I love Marcus. That guy as a person, as a role model, as somebody that really embraced all the stupid stuff that we care about as Celtic fans about the organization, the history of it, what it means to be on the team. It's one of the most important franchises in any sport, and he really just understood that. He was really open about all the stuff that's happened in his life. He had an unusually tough life, And we know with the NBA, a lot of these guys have had tough childhoods or tough upbringings, whatever. And he is had among the toughest, and was always open about it. Was always trying to help other people with his story, and I just think he's a really special guy. And so, from that aspect, and from how hard he plays and the stuff that he cares about, it's such a win for Memphis. This is you guys will get him the most. I really mean that. I think this city and this franchise will get everything that he brings to the table the most.
You think you're gonna miss him?
Yeah, it's going to really hurt to watch him on another team because when you have a guy like that for 9 years, it's a long freaking time, think about how old's your oldest son now?
Yeah, 13.
Yeah, so he was 4 when we got Marcus. We drafted him, and he kind of went through all the things, all the kind of the stages with him. And, the guy that he turned into when we made the finals 2 years ago, he was a really special player. I voted for him for Defensive Player of the Year. I do really wonder what the next stage of his career is going to be like physically. I think he's had a lot of injuries. I think he's played hurt a lot. But next year, he will have the eye of the tiger. At least for next year, that will be probably the best Marcus Smart season. He's going to be so mad that they traded him. He'll be in the Rocky Ford mountain, doing in the ski boots, trying to climb a 25. He'll be lifting logs in some log cabin. He will be fired up.
You know what's funny about you say that? I heard you say it on the pod, and then right after the trade happened, Chris Mannix, who does Celtic stuff, texted me and said, "The Marcus you will get Defensive Player of the Year, Marcus, and then you're gonna have the last 2 Defensive Players of the Year. It's never happened in NBA history where you had 2 Defensive Players of the Year on the same team."
No, he's gonna be a maniac.
And
he needs to be in better shape.
Yeah,
I thought his conditioning was off a little last year because he was hurt.
Yeah.
The big thing with him is he going to be able to guard other guards anymore? Because that was the thing that was missing last year. He couldn't stay in front of guards last year.
Right.
And that's what you need from that spot because you don't want Ja guarding, Darius Garland and name 20 guys like that. Marcus is going to have to be. Russillo would always point this out. He was always great at guarding 6'7", 6'8" guys. Or even 6'9" guys, I'm thinking down the road.
Trust me, I did not post it as to not hurt anyone's feelings. There is a 2-minute YouTube clip of him shutting down Kristaps Porzingis.
Oh, is there? I'm not surprised.
There is. I watched the whole thing, and I was like, he just doesn't move an inch. He doesn't move. It's crazy.
Like, if you have Denver in a playoff series, I wouldn't be shocked if they threw him on Jokic to try to mess with him. Like, that's the kind of stuff we were doing with him. He gets so low to the ground. He's the second best flopper in the league behind Lowry. So when he gets those bigger guys, he just plants his feet and then he flies backwards the moment that they go into him. He does a lot of great stuff. He'll drive you crazy with the turnovers. I'm just telling you guys now. Like, he'll try to thread the needle on the half-court bounce pass through 3 guys, and it'll get deflected or picked off. He'll throw the lob to somebody that is 2 seconds too late. He'll have 2 bad turnovers a game. He just will. But there's so many other great things he brings to the table. Like, you forgive him for it. That's the power of Marcus.
Percentage chance that you love or hate Porzingis within 30 games. What do you think?
I'm in on Porzingis. House watched him all year. He's vouched for him. The thing that I don't think Porzingis gets enough credit for is there's a nastiness to him offensively. Like, hey, there's a disdain he has for opponents. Like, he's not like your typical soft. I think he has this rap of being like a soft, tall guy, because especially the Luka experience, I don't think helped him. But, he was used terribly with Dallas, and that was a bad situation for him.
But why is he not good stats, bad team guy? Somebody's got to score. Somebody's got to get these numbers.
It's very possible he is. That's the risk of the trade. But watching him last year, I just thought he got his points. Anybody can get 20 points in an NBA game if they're taking enough shots. I thought the shots he got and the points he was scoring were really high level, and all the second spectrum stuff backs it up. Like, all the shots and the looks he gets and creates for himself, he's really hard to defend. And then defensively,
he's so unique too. I mean, look, we see everybody come through. There are the only 2 guys that we ever see here that, like, where Jaren does not look like overwhelming to them are Mobley and Porzingis. That's it.
Right.
Like, that's it. Those 2 guys are freakish. Yep. Oh, Embiid as well. Yep.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, my dad was like, is he going to be able to guard Embiid and Jokic? I'm like, nobody can guard Jokic. Like, what is there, a Jokic stopper? He runs through the whole entire league. And Embiid, we have Horford, I guess, that is the thing to me is it seems like Grant's leaving. And even though Grant didn't play well last season,
am I going to have you on if he ends up here in Memphis? Are you going to say, I'll miss Grant, or no?
Well, I'll miss Grant. I'll miss Grant against Milwaukee because that was the team. He, for whatever reason, was really good against Giannis. And
we don't play them.
Yeah, you don't care about them. I think Grant, if it's $12 million a year, great. If we're drifting into the 17, 18, I'm nervous. Right? And that's going to be the big thing with this month, next month, is guys like Kuzma, guys like Grant, guys like Jeremy Grant, these guys that aren't necessarily all-stars. I don't know what the market is for those guys anymore.
What happens with the Jalen thing?
He signs a big contract, and then we see what it looks like over the course of the next year. I think he wants to be the guy on his own team. He wants the money first. You know how the league goes, Chris. The guys get the money, and then they decide what they want to happen. Bradley Beal, no trade clause, wasted another year in Washington, but then ultimately got to the team he wanted to get to.
In fairness, it's not just athletes that get the money and then figure it out. I've heard the royal family might as well.
Come on.
My first favorite thing is Sad Bill meme. My second favorite thing is you in all these headlines with the royal family. You versus the royal family is my favorite thing ever. I love it.
But back to Marcus Smart. What is Memphis going to spend the 12.2?
Yeah. Yes.
There's good guys. I actually think that's going to be because we're not going to have the 20 to 25 million guys anymore. I don't think. So there's going to be a couple guys who go for that mid-level where we're like, whoa, that guy?
Yep.
And then we'll still have, like, somebody will give Austin Reeves $98 million. And I think they should. I mean,
you see, like last year, right? if you think about those NBA finals, the guy that swung it at the end was Bruce Brown. They got that guy for $6 million.
Right.
$6 million.
I think so. He's worth 12 to me.
For sure.
I would like if you guys got him, I'd be like, oh man, look at this, grit and grind.
He could fit on any team. Awesome.
And he got pigeonholed as like he was being used as this oddity on Brooklyn.
Yeah.
The like a screen roll, like the undersized 5 guy, and the guy played point guard in college. I think the Nuggets kind of unleashed him. Hey, to me, the Nuggets that's going to be the stealth team to watch. Next month, because I just think, to me, it's the Nuggets and it's everybody else, and it's very different than any finals team we've had in the last 5 years. Where if they can just add around the fringes, they just have to be the favorites again, and it's not even close. I don't even know who I'd have second.
I agree with you.
And then the Milwaukee Middleton thing will be the other one, whether they're willing to let him walk or not, or they can be afraid to pay him. If they don't pay him, who are they going to get instead? Who can be that forward scorer? So there's a lot of balls in the air. Do you feel great about any team other than Denver? Because I don't.
No, not great, especially when you bring up that Milwaukee thing. New owner, kind of figure that thing out. Everybody got, excited about the Phoenix thing last week, but they got to fill out 12 other guys on that roster at this point. I don't really like Chris on the Warriors, and that's more of a not as much. There's some basketball stuff, just like with him and Draymond, if they do bring them both back. It's 2 non-shooters, so you're putting a lot on the others. The other thing is, part of his trajectory of not winning at the highest level is he is the culture everywhere.
Yeah.
He walks in, that's Chris Paul's team.
He's a famous guy who's run a lot of teams. Yeah.
And it's going to be the first time that he's going to walk into a locker room and not have the most gravitas.
So you're thinking 04 Gary Payton, Karl Malone vibes for you?
It just gets weird, right?
I think they want to get out that Jordan Poole contract.
Oh,
what was
God,
interesting
of
to
course.
me, we didn't talk about this yesterday, is whether they considered trading him for Porzingis and just doing it that way.
Oh.
Golden State.
Why
would you rather have Porzingis or Chris Paul? I think if I'm them, I would rather have Porzingis.
That's
way better insurance.
They probably couldn't.
Maybe.
They probably couldn't.
I gotta go.
All right. See you, buddy. Thank you for coming on.
Bye, guys. Bye, Memphis.
Buddy. Thank you. Thank you, Bill. The Podfather himself. Effusive in his praise about Marcus Smart and how much everybody in Memphis is going to love him.
The Chris Vernon Show, presented by Caesars Sportsbook. Live weekdays at noon